speaking of loaded teams, what are your opinions on the Steelers? They have one of the better rosters in the league, I'd say, both on offense and defense. What do you think some of their strengths are? And then maybe I could say some of their weaknesses, or we could go back and forth. But what do you think they do really well?
The Steelers, their defense obviously is just outstanding, and it starts up front. They're so physical. Like, the Steelers just impose their will physically on teams, and they have Stephon Tuitt coming back. Tyson Alu is playing out of his mind. Cam Hayward is one of the best 3-4 defensive ends in the NFL. TJ Watt is in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. Bud Dupree is awesome. They lost Devin Bush. I thought it would hurt them a little more, but it doesn't seem to.
It hasn't hurt them as much as I think a lot of people thought it would, because he's a really good inside linebacker and he fits their team so well.
Right, and their corners, I think Joe Hayden, he had one bad year the last year in Cleveland, and people thought he was washed. He's kind of rediscovered himself playing for Pittsburgh. He's really good. Steven Nelson is all right. He was a good free agent signing for them. He's pretty good. And then, obviously, the two safeties. Terrell Edmonds is some hitter, some tackler. Not the best guy in coverage, but I feel like his responsibility always in coverage is difficult because the Steelers do so many exotic things with their blitzes. They leave him in a lot of tough spots, and that exposes him a little bit more than it should, but he's a really good player. And then, obviously, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Everybody knows how good Minkah Fitzpatrick is and how much he's helped. So their defense is 100% a strength.
Mm-hmm.
I still think their offense is a strength, and that's because they're very efficient on third down. That's been one of the more underrated things about this offense this year. Like, they're not the same offense they were. Like, before Big Ben, it used to be Ben stands in the pocket real tall, real strong, and waits, and they're throwing the ball down the field every other play with Antonio Brown and all of that. Now they're a little more ball control. Ben's a little shorter throwing the ball. I think his deficiencies throwing the ball down the field have been a little overblown. I don't think they've really had to throw it down the field, and I still think he can do it when he has to. But otherwise, he's been phenomenal in the short, quick game throwing the ball, and they have three guys that are pretty good wide receivers. I'm not the biggest Juju fan. I thought Juju was vastly overrated when Antonio Brown left, and people thought he could be number one. But I think he's a great fit when you have three guys where a different guy's the number one every week between him, Deontay Johnson, and Chase Claypool.
No, I'm with you on their offense. And one thing that I think a weakness of their team is their ability to run the ball has not been as good as it has in the past. Even with James Conner, he's kind of been injured a little bit, but even with him in the past, I felt like they did a better job of running the ball. And obviously with Le'Veon Bell, his time on the Steelers was just incredible by any stretch of the imagination for a running back. But I think an issue with them is going to be running the ball.
Yeah, they're the 24th ranked run offense in terms of yards per game. They should get their attempts right because they should be ahead. So
they're winning all the time, and I think one thing with their defense is their defense puts them in really good positions. The defense puts the offense in good positions by forcing stops early, not letting the team get a bunch of first downs to pin them back on their own side of the ball. They force tons of turnovers, giving the offense a lot of chances. And it kind of reminds me of last year, almost the Ravens defense. They were very opportunistic in getting turnovers. So it works. It does work. And that's the makings of a Super Bowl team, to be honest with you, a defense that can be historic in the amount of turnovers and how well it does. But their inability to run could be a downfall they have for sure.
Right. I agree with you there. And then with their defense, there's going to be games where I feel like sometimes they were too reliant on their defense to score. Like before we came on here, I was watching. There were too many mental errors. I know they're coming off a lot of different things, and that's why. But sometimes, when you have to play Kansas City, you can't expect, their defense is going to get the business because every defense gets the business ultimately because the rules are built just to make the offense get highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my one thing. And then my other thing is, when is attrition going to catch up with this team? This team hasn't had a bye. They've had the wackiest schedule because of other teams' issues with the COVID protocol, be it Tennessee, be it Baltimore now. they've had to deal with a lot. Like, I understand Mike Tomlin seems to be one of the best coaches in the NFL in terms of just ensuring that his team stays on schedule, on task, and focused at the job at hand. But the NFL season, like, there's a reason that teams with the bye usually make the Super Bowl, and they need that bye. Like, they need to get the number one seed, because without the bye, if it stays in the 7 playoff thing and doesn't go to 8, I think their bodies are just going to catch up to them, because they're just not going to have rest. They didn't get a proper bye this year. They didn't get the proper Thursday night game rest. So I hope that I'm wrong when I say that, but because I really want them to win the Super Bowl this year. Like, if I have a rooting interest without the 49ers, it's them, but we'll see.
Yeah, and that playoff spot, the first seed, is going to be even more crucial this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, extra game, you never know what will happen in the NFL. So that 2 versus 7 seed, just even accumulation of injuries and mileage for the players is going to be a big component of it.